Live at 10.
With the outcome of last week's election, some people feel the need to take their health into their own hands, even to the extent of considering a surgery they hadn't felt they needed.
Our Bella Caracta shares the story of two Omaha women who want to take action now.
For some, after the election,
disappointment.
And for Rosemary Kirk, questions.
Anyone with a uterus, their body is political right now.
Nebraska voters rejected an abortion rights initiative on the ballot and passed an initiative which would put the current 12-week abortion ban in the state constitution. Google searches in Nebraska for the phrase "tubes tied" spiked the day after the election.
I would rather make that decision for myself than the politics have that decision for me.
26-year-old Kirk is now looking into getting her tubes tied or removed, a surgical, more permanent way to prevent pregnancy. She already has an IUD for birth control. So does 34-year-old Katina Talley.
Most birth control methods, like there is the opportunity that it would fail or the chance that it would fail. I started to realize that I needed to be proactive.
Talley tried to get the tubal sterilization procedure 4 years ago, but doctors said she was too young.
I am on medication that causes severe birth defects, should an accidental pregnancy occur. The idea of having to face that, unimaginable.
The election results renewed her sense of urgency to try again. Her doctor's appointment is next month. The what-ifs are also racing through Rosemary Kirk's mind.
The only thing that I can think of worse than getting assaulted is getting assaulted and then having to get pregnant and carry that baby to term.
Nebraska law does have exceptions for rape and incest, but Kirk says that doesn't give her much assurance.
Since when do we hold people who rape other people accountable?
With conversations circulating about women taking their health into their own hands, take a look at this spreadsheet. It's a nationwide crowdsourced list of doctors willing to perform tubal sterilization surgery to people 21 and older, regardless of marital status or number of children. On your side, Bella Caracta, 6 News.